וכל החיים יודוך סלע, וכל החיים יודוך סלע, והללו את שמך באמת, והללו את שמך באמת, והללו את שמך באמת, והללו את שמך באמת. האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע, האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע, והללו את שמך באמת, 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 והללו את שמך באמת. וכל החיים יודוך סלע.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. No.
Oh, sorry, I had the wrong mic. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, that's a little glitch on my response. Okay, doing this 10 years, I still screw up. Anyway, that's a little switched up from you. You usually hear you playing the harp, and that was also a great video. Who shot that?
Yeah, my cousin Simon Papaliers has a video company. Let's see, RanierVisualMedia.com, and he was kind enough to shoot that for me. I think he was on the trip out west, so he took the video on his trip there.
That's really good. I mean, I really was impressed by that. It's like the splendors of nature, and the song is like where did you draw your inspiration for this? The collection is, by the way, is called Dafna, a Song of Prayer, right? Songs of Prayer?
Yeah, that's right. And, my name is Laurel Federbush, but the reason it's called Dafna is my Hebrew name. Well, actually, now my Hebrew name is Dafna Esther. I added Esther to it. But at the time I made the CD, my Hebrew name was Dafna, which is actually the Hebrew for laurel. It's from the Greek word, but it's the Hebrew word for the laurel plant.
No, there's 35 tracks on this CD, right?
Yeah, that's right. They're all pretty short, though.
Yeah, no, that's are these original, or these are draw from traditional songs or songs?
The words are all Hebrew prayer words, either of the whole prayer or psalm, or else maybe one or two lines of it. Some of them are parts of the prayers that are normally sung to a different tune. I made up a different tune instead of the one that's usually done. Or some of them are ones that are usually read silently that I decided to add music to. Or sometimes they're parts of the prayer that are just usually sort of said out loud, but with chanted, but with no particular tune to them. And but I added the tune. But the words are all from the existing prayers.
Now that takes. I mean, Hebrew is a hard language to learn for Americans, especially. I mean, it's like these vocalizations, the sounds is totally different in many ways. I mean, there's more of the chas sound. I mean, it's hard for a lot of Americans to approximate. How long have you studied Hebrew? Obviously, right?
I've been attending the synagogue, Beth Israel Synagogue in Ann Arbor since I should know. I think 2008, either 2007 or 2008. So I guess a little over 10 years. And I sort of, my main interest in Hebrew is the biblical Hebrew, or knowing how to do the prayers and the chanting. So I don't really, I'm not, I don't know modern Hebrew, but it's, the prayers, I wouldn't always be able to tell you word for word exactly what they mean, but but I do chanting, and like I do the Torah readings at the synagogue, so I'm able to. Hebrew is a phonetic language, so I'm able to say a lot more of the words than what I actually know what they mean. I know a lot of people at my synagogue would actually know exactly what every word means, but I don't always. I know some of it, but not as much as I'd like to know.
Now, say for the Christians who actually ever listen to our conversation here, a lot of this, what you're singing from, would be found in our what we call the Old Testament. We call the Old Testament or the Torah. Would they be in there, or would these be in there, or would they be in the extra writings, extra biblical writings of the Jews?
Well, the prayer books, they're in the prayers. There's a the prayer. It's not the. It's not the Old Testament. No, it's
the prayers. Yeah, it's like there's
books,
like
yeah.
no what okay, there's different denominations.
Oh, it's called a Siddur. I was trying to think of.
Yeah, I never that one I've never heard of. I've heard of
Okay.
the Midrash. I've heard of the Torah. I've heard of the Mishnah. I've heard of the other, the religious books of the scriptures or the commentaries, whatever, from Judaism. But I've never heard of that book myself. Now, I like what denomination would be not denomination, but major branch of Judaism would you say you're connected to, or would be like this?
I go to a conservative synagogue.
Okay, now the distinction of that, there's Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, correct? The three
Right, yeah,
major
that's right.
branches, right?
Yeah, and then there are some smaller ones too.
Now, where would Hasidim, fit? Hasidim, where would that fit into?
Yeah, that would be more, that's I guess a more strict form of Judaism. That's not the variety that I practice.
Okay, because I know there's the Christian churches, especially amongst the Protestants, or I think the number I've seen is like 30,000 denominations. Okay, so I mean it's like mind-boggling how.
I guess conservative would be sort of in between the Orthodox and the Reform. I think it came after the Reform movement. It was, I guess there was the Orthodox, and then the Reform was a little bit of a rebellion against that, and then the conservative movement was saying, well, maybe the Reformists went too far. So I guess it's sort of like the, in between, just right, supposedly form of Judaism, or at least that was my understanding of how they came about.
Now, the title of that song we just heard was, what was that?
V'chol hachayim yoducha. It's every living thing, praise you.
Well, so that's kind of fitting with that
Thank
video.
you. I'm sorry.
It's kind of fitting with that video. The different
Right.
manifestations, the mountainside, the animals, the birds, all that.
And one reason I decided to have my cousin do that song for me, as opposed to any of the others, is because we're separated geographically. Like he lives in Vermont, and I'm here in Michigan, obviously, and so it would be kind of very difficult for us to arrange for me to be in a video. But that one was about just living things and life. So I thought, well, he could do some nature scenes for that video. It would fit in with the words.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot. Could you kind of roughly translate the lyrics of that song into English for us we who are not Hebrew speakers?
Let's see. Well, first, let every living thing thank you. And Selah is a word that my understanding is that they don't know exactly what it means, but it's a word that comes up in songs, so they don't know if it was some kind of a musical direction or what, but it comes up a lot in songs. And then and let us let's see, let us praise let us truly praise your name. And then God is our strength and our help. And then, again, let us truly praise your name.
So those are like sentiments or thoughts, are actually it's very similar to what we would find in the Book of Psalms too. I mean, the magnificence of God, the intensity of God, the awesomeness of God. I mean, the inexpressibility of God. Almost inconceivability of all these attributes. I mean, that's what that's where I get from it anyway. I think it did a very good job on that. I don't know. It's like I'm learning a little bit of Aramaic. The church I go to, in the Syrian Church of the East here in Flint, it's like they speak Aramaic, which is kind of a sister language to Hebrew. And there's a lot of words I hear I can hear during like a synagogue service on television or something like that. I can actually say, "Wow, I kind of know what that means." But it's approximation. But I mean,
right. Yeah, some of the prayers we do are actually in Aramaic. So.
Now, what would come? I know you're not a linguist, expert, but a lingual, But what language would probably be the older language? Would have been Aramaic or would have been Hebrew?
I think I heard the Hebrew was older, but I'm not sure. I think Aramaic was the language of the common people, whatever that means, or the more spoken language. But again, I'm not sure. I don't know my history of that so well.
Well, like from what I've been told about Aramaic, I guess there's like two major divisions, two major divisions in that, and it's like widespread language. I mean, from the region of what we consider where area where Jesus would have been, the Christians of Jesus would have been connected to, all the way up to like Iraq and Iran. Those regions some of those people spoke a variation of Aramaic. That's what my understanding. Sketchy, and I think I would say a lot of people would say, saying definitively that they didn't speak this or that would be really taking a risk saying that, because I think that as soon as an archaeological dig come out, they would come up with documents or some kind of evidence that shows that there was more widespread, or I don't know. But Aramaic is like a language that's real similar to Hebrew from my understanding. And like I said, I didn't do too well in linguistics when I took it in college. I mean, it was so particular, so. The linguistics and just mind-boggling. I still get confused just thinking about it. So anyway, you got 35 tracks on this, and would you want to perform one live for us right now?
Sure.
Putting you on the spot, aren't I?
One of the simpler ones. Some of them have more different words than others, but this is Adonai Yimloch Leolam Va'ed, which means God will reign forever. So let me just get a swig of water first. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai Yimloch, Adonai, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed.
Very good.
Oh, I think I might have forgotten. Adonai means God, or our Lord, and and one of the reasons I'm doing these without instrumental accompaniment, at our synagogue, our particular variety of conservative Judaism, we don't use instruments during the Shabbat prayer services. So everything that's sung is sung Acappella. So that's the way I'm kind of used to thinking of the prayer music. So
forgive me my ignorance on this, but I know that there are people in synagogue service that are called the cantors, right?
Mm-hmm,
and right. Would they sing these type of songs, or would they be singing something more like liturgical, or to use?
They might do like. Our synagogue, we don't have a cantor except for special holiday services. They do use a cantor. And the cantor either sings things by himself or leads the congregation in songs. But sometimes in our synagogue, we have other people leading the prayer songs. So it's not like we have one person doing it, just different people take turns doing it. So, yeah, and sometimes for the holidays they do things that are a little bit more ornamental, things that might be difficult for, someone without special training to sing, in addition to the regular prayer service songs.
Now, I was in one synagogue years ago when I was, this got to be almost 40 years ago, when I was a teenager, and I believe it was a conservative synagogue service, and basically it was a longer service. I mean, the people who think they're going to get in and out by an hour, going to be
Yeah.
sad mistake. It's like, what, 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours at times, right?
So, I mean, not everyone comes or stays for the entire thing. Most people actually come late. Usually the very beginning of the service, there are very few people there.
No, it's like, now with conservatives, I know the Orthodox, the men and women sit separately.
Yeah, our synagogue, we don't do that. I think conservative generally, they don't do that.
Now, these songs right here, would a person sing this and they're doing like private devotions at home or something like that by themselves, or?
I don't know. I mean, right now I'm the only one singing them, but I was picturing them being something that someone could sing at the synagogue or just by themselves. So.
No, this book, the book again. What's the name again?
Oh, the Siddur.
Siddur.
Yeah, that's done during the prayer services. Some of them are done during the the full either Friday night or Saturday morning services, and sometimes also during the daily prayer services. The Minyan and Mariv are the two the weekday prayer services.
Now, see, you go to like a Christian, like the maybe evangelical or fundamentalist, they have like a prayer, they have like a worship service, they call it, and they sing song after song after song, and very emotional, some are very emotional, and some almost like tear-jerking songs. And a lot of them, I think now there's a bit of movement lately to go back and try to understand Hebrew forms of worship more. Now would these songs be saying like, just like, is there an order of service to the
yeah. And it's kind of a complicated order too. Like, I've been going there for like over a decade, and I'm still not. I still don't have it down pat. Like I still don't always know exactly what page number they're going to, or what specific prayer comes next, or what part of the service. It's kind of complicated, and and the order we do it in isn't exactly the order that's in the books. Often you have to jump around from here and then go back to some other page, and it's not that easy to predict. And then some things are repeated, like you do it once through everyone chanting the prayers out loud, and then you read it silently to yourself, and the same thing that you just said out loud, but then you go back and repeat and read it to yourself silently, and then there's like the mourner's Kaddish is a prayer that's sung by people, who are, if your husband or wife or, parent or, if someone very closely connected to you has passed away, you say this mourner's Kaddish for 11 months. And so the people stand to say that, but everyone says, even people who aren't in mourning say parts of it. But anyway, this mourner's Kaddish comes up more than once during the service. And, there are other parts that happen more than once. So it's actually a very complicated thing. Like, if I were inventing my own religion, I wouldn't invent something nearly so complicated. But I find it very satisfying, though.
No, it's like the mourner's Kaddish, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, now, from my understanding, I might be wrong, but during that prayer, or prayer actually, there's no mention of death.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're correct. It's basically, my understanding is the point of it is it's sort of a demonstration of faith in God, even when you've suffered a grievous loss. It's sort of, you're demonstrating to the community, that you still believe wholeheartedly in God, even despite this. So it's sort of an affirmation of God's glory and power. But it also, like, even though it doesn't specifically mention death or grieving, I think it's sort of understood, like, the sound of the words, or just the whole process of saying the mourner's Kaddish is an act of grieving, and it's sort of a way of getting community sympathy and support. So even though it's not said, I think it's kind of implied.
So now these songs, are they ancient or near ancient, or are they more like a few hundred years, or are there some recent relatively recent creation?
unfortunately, I don't. I think it's sort of a mixture of all of those, and unfortunately, I don't know my history so well. But I think some of them are more ancient, and some of them might be more modern, or some of the ancient ones have been revised, or sort of they're. I think the more modern people have changed them a bit. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't know as well as I should know.
Because in my collection of books, I'm a book nut, and basically, I mean, every time I see books, I mean, when I'm watching TV and I see a library, pictured, or like books behind somebody, I'm looking at it. So during my course of my book, binges, I purchased a couple of books of prayer for the Hebrew books of prayer. I think one was called the Union Book of Prayer. Okay. Now, is that where the conservative congregations read from, or?
I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay,
maybe I just don't know it by that name or something.
It's like are there English translations alongside?
Yeah. A lot of the things are translated. I'm not sure if every single prayer, every word is translated, but yeah, you can. And the translations often aren't literal, and that was one thing that was sort of annoying to me, because like, even though I don't know Hebrew that well, I know it well enough that I was able to, like, when I was trying to come up with my very precise, titles for my songs, I translated them, and I realized that the words in the Siddur weren't as literal as I wanted them to be. Like, often they would sort of just translate it in a way that sort of conveyed the general meaning, but without it being word for word. But I wanted my titles to be a little bit more faithful to the Hebrew than that. So, yeah, so it's sort of, they do translate them, but not always very faithfully, in my opinion.
No, it's like, I know you like to take on really a daunting task. I mean, could you see yourself maybe taking some of these songs and trying to do a translation of them to them?
Well, the titles that I gave the song, like I had the Hebrew title and then an English translation of my title, and the English translations, I mean, some of them are just exactly the way they are, but some of them are my own, my own translation. So to that extent, I did. I don't think I'll ever be good enough at Hebrew, though, to do it, anything much, more involved than translating the titles of my own songs. I might at some point do another album of these and do more titles, but yeah.
What got you interested in doing in this a CD with these acapella songs? Because your major strength is your harp playing, and this has got to be kind of, you probably feel kind of naked sitting in a place or standing up in a place singing these songs without your harp. I mean,
well, I just really like the synagogue services, and I guess I've always composed music, as long as I've been playing, just about anyway. I've been composing also. And just, music is a big part of our services. That's one of the main reasons that I was attracted to the synagogue to begin with, was I liked the melodies that they were singing. So just hearing the songs, and then some of them I just thought, well, we have songs, but I could write songs too. So, just sort of, I just had to be a part of it. And, I got to actually, they let me perform one of these songs. It was actually before I did all of the songs. There was one I started with, and they let me perform that at the synagogue. So but one wasn't enough. I wanted to do more of them. So. And, I guess people also often like to do something different. Anyone who creates things, often they'll go in some new direction. Like if you're an actor, you want to try your hand at directing, or, if you're a harpist, you might want to, learn to play the flute, or, just whatever. People often like to sort of explore something new. So.
No, like a lot of Christian churches, like the Catholic and the Orthodox, to do anything like this, they'd actually have to get some kind of. A lot of people would feel the need to get approval by some kind of authority. Now, were you encumbered with anything like that, or were you relatively free?
No, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I mean, there are some things that I do that in these songs that I guess aren't strictly, kosher. I'm using the word kosher literally, like that song I just did, Adonai Le'olam Va'ed. I think you're not supposed to use the word Adonai more often than you have to. Like I repeat that word a whole lot in that song, just because I think it sounds good. I'm a musician. I made my decisions mainly on what sounded good to me. But if someone's very more theologically centered, they might say, "Oh no, that's not correct because you're using Adonai. You're using God's name too much." So. And this the second song on my album is it's my take on the Shema, which is one of the major parts of the service. Here Israel, Adonai is God and Adonai is one. You say it like this. It's a very fundamental part of the service. And I heard you're not really supposed to tamper with that. You're supposed to do that exactly a certain way, and you're not supposed to mess with it. So, I guess I like to think that my song version of that, or I use the same words, but I set it to a particular tune, So I'm not trying to replace the Shema. Shema means hear. I'm not trying to replace that. I'm just doing a song that's based on it, so I don't see myself as really tampering with it. I'm doing my own version of, I'm just doing something that's inspired by it.
Yeah, because I know that like a lot of like the Christian churches, if you were to do something, you'd like risk censor or angering somebody.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe someone out there would be angry at what I'm doing. I don't know. I hope not.
Well, see, another thing is too, like a lot of Christians have gone back and started looking at Hebrew, and there's many names for God. The different, or like maybe the attributes of God.
Yeah, Adonai actually isn't really the name of God. It means our Lord, or I think it's my Lord or our Lord. I'm trying to remember. But it's based on the word for Lord. But it's not really God. It's not one of the names of God. We're not actually supposed to say the name of God. There are these different spellings of it, but we're not really supposed to pronounce them because the name of God is too holy. So it's not exactly the name, but it's just sort of a generic word. It sort of means a God, but it's not the specific name of God.
Like I've heard somewhere like there's over 100 different names that could be used to describe God or to denote God, and it's like and a lot of Christian churches, like they have El Shaddai, they use the word term I forget what that El Ropa or something like that. I mean El Jireh, those are all like I can't remember all the I have a book at home, but I don't memorize them. I mean, to me it's like we have this face to say God is basically. You just say that word right there. It's a very vague term. So I don't think you're running afoul to say God, because the attributes of God are so complex, or the attributes people describe to them are so complex. But either way, you're going to run the risk of some people being offended, no matter what. But I think the reluctance to actually say something like that, like the Jews have, the kind of this reluctance, or almost like a prohibition of pronouncing the actual name of God is. I think that does keep something intact, holy and sacred. So I mean, it's like beyond being sullied by human conception or human speculation, perhaps.
Right. And Hebrew, at least our variety of Judaism, I think it's sort of believed that God is mysterious, and there's more than one interpretation of things. We read the Torah, we read it over and over again, but there are always different things we can see, and that you never are supposed to, I think, feel that, oh, I've got this, this is, because it's not simple. It's sort of more complicated than any one interpretation you can put on it. There's a mystery to it.
That's I think that's the term I'm a Protestant. I grew up in a Protestant church, and I was always puzzled by what a Catholic meant by the word mystery, because it's been kind of nowadays English speakers, mystery is like a whodunit, a mystery, and the way they use it. The original Greek or Latin, I forget where it comes from, but it actually means an unfolding, like an unveiling, and you've kind of pull it up. You have to actually look at it being in different segments or something like that. And that's like kind of when I learned that the word mystery become more meaningful to me rather than the whodunit kind of definition we seem to currently use in our society. And I mean, it's like we have a tendency to as soon as we start labeling something, then we start way of reducing its importance or its sanctity. And I think that's I think that's an intriguing part, of Judaism, that they do keep that.
And the fact that it's in Hebrew, like it's in a different language, like, some Catholics prefer that the Mass be in Latin. And, I used to think, well, that's kind of silly. Wouldn't you want to know everything that they're saying? But I guess now with I'm going to a synagogue where it's in Hebrew and I don't understand Hebrew that well. And, but I can sort of appreciate that some of it's, the mystery of it, that they're saying things, but I don't quite understand exactly what they're saying. Or even if you do know Hebrew, you still, like I said, you can hear things differently. And it gives it a certain kind of mystery.
Now it's like I would say that Americans and well, I just can't say Americans, modern people, Europeans probably in this, they have a tendency to want. They don't have there's a reluctance to actually find something meaningful in something that comes from the past.
Right.
They always want something novel. I mean, there's a novelness of your, these songs are novel. To many people, they're going to be novel. They're going to be unique. They're going to be unheard of. And they're going to find something about it, especially if they try to delve into the Hebrew and the meaning of those words in Hebrew and how they can be brought into this culture. But I think there's a tendency to I think it's a bad tendency to always want something new. I think George Santayana said, you can understand why something wants to be you want something spontaneous, but why does it have to be new?
Okay, that's well put.
Yeah, and that's and I think that's when I'm learning a little bit of Aramaic, and also when I learn Greek and Latin, when I learn a little bit of it, because it comes through the liturgy or whatever of the different churches, you do find yourself reconnecting to something that basically just going through the process of trying to figure out what they meant by this or how that was used. You're reconnecting to the past. And I think that's something I do admire about the Jewish people, is that they have a tendency to, even though they might be secular, they have this kind of reverence for something in the past.
Right.
They don't just trample it. And I respect that. I mean, I think I'm a very old-fashioned person. I think that, yeah, there's a lot of things that come through the world that are from the past that are negative. Hatred, rage, prejudices, But then again, you have to sort out how you have those prejudices. Everybody's going to have some form of prejudice or some kind of, maybe some people call bigotry. If it's really out and out blatant bigotry that's unneeded, abandon it. But there's kernels, there's gold nuggets that come through that a lot of people just seem to trample like pearl, trample like the pig, trampling over, pearls. I mean, just trampling over and just destroying them. And I think that's appalling.
Right.
And that's why I always like something like I like churches that have. When I was growing up in a Protestant church, I grew up and I learned the Bible, and I knew the words of it and all that. But when you start learning where it came from and the words of the people and their language and their cultures, to me that lends itself to me having to say, well, that was something in the past. You could dismiss it. No, people are people, and they're fighting against the same impulses and the same doubts that we currently are. There's nothing unique to us.
Right.
We think because the only thing we have now is that we're using technology they didn't have 30 years ago.
Right.
But that's the only thing unique about this, the whole experience that we're experiencing now.
Yeah, I think I heard somewhere that ancient China, they had, I think it was the steam engine, or there was some particular technological advance that they hadn't come up with. But they said that if they had come up with that, they would be exactly as technologically advanced as we are. Because I guess they were pretty close. So, I guess the technology, it comes in cycles. Or I guess civilizations go in cycles. But we're nothing new. We're people have always been people. So.
Yeah, and if you read Scripture, I mean, even if you read Scripture, that's one thing that's remarkable. There wasn't this creation of legendary mythological people who are totally totally strong and totally invincible in the Hebrew Scripture. Mm-hmm. There was actually their vulnerabilities are displayed. They're analyzed. I mean, they're admitted to. Other cultures didn't do that. They try to create a large in life legend about their leaders and about their people and about their heroes, and that's one thing vastly different. They were very flawed humans.
Right. Yeah. In the Bible, there's no one who you're supposed to. I mean, God is God, but none of the people are supposed to be, they're all mortals, and I guess Moses would be the closest one that we, but we're not. he's just a flawed person like anyone else, and God gets angry at him and won't let him enter the promised land. Even though he's the great leader of the Jewish people, but there's no one who we're supposed to see as really more godlike than anyone else, and they're all of the all of the people are flawed, and there's very little in terms of this is a good person and this is an evil person. There's some of that, but most of the people portrayed in the Torah are they're complex. Like they do some good things and some bad things, and they're just complicated people.
Yeah, and I think that's where there's an earthiness to it and a willingness to admit the foibles of humans and actually to actually try to actually embrace them even with these flaws. I think that's a very, I don't know, kind of a warm and fuzzy feeling creating thing,
Right, yeah.
because it's like there's like a love, there's a potential for everybody to be loved, to find some kind of salvation or some kind of or avoidance of condemnation, because you look at the overall person and the checkered past, those one or two incidents were just stern examples of virtue. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just I think that's one thing about anybody wants to say the Bible, the Old the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, is like just a myth. They're just myths. I never got the feeling of like I'd actually want to meet these people, or I could actually know somebody like this when I was reading the Greek and the Roman myths. I love them, okay, but there's something more something more relatable. From the stories that come through the Hebrew scriptures, and I think that's it's better describes the average human than these people standing up on Mount Olympus.
Yeah, and I think women actually play a pretty big part in the in the Bible too. It's not. I mean, people can find fault with the women's position in the society. They weren't. To some degree, they were considered like chattel, but they weren't. The female characters in the Bible, I think they're pretty strong, and they're treated with as much dignity as the male characters. I think so.
Actually, in some ways, they had people who were vacillating. They had men who were vacillating. Where the women, once they were in this, they're in the fight or in that position, they didn't turn back. They didn't waffle at all. They were like steadfast.
Right.
I mean, even in the time where they considered the through the feminist lens, it can be considered like the weaker sex or something like that. You had a Deborah in the Bible. She was a judge.
Right.
Okay. And the Jews did have a tendency to allow women roles that were probably denied women of other cultures around them. So I mean. Now the worship that you go to, the service you go to at this congregation, are women called upon to take part in the Sunday service?
Yeah, it's egalitarian. Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't always like that. The conservative movement, at one point women weren't considered part of the minyan, but I'm not sure if it's every conservative congregation or not, but I think it is, though. I think it's an entirely egalitarian movement, or at least predominantly so.
Now, would you want to do another? I'll put you on the spot. Would you want to do another song?
Yeah. Okay. Let me do another. Okay. Well, as long as I was talking about the song, maybe I'll do it. The one that I said was based on the Shema, which means "Hear, O Lord," and the title of this is "Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad," means the sovereign is our God, the sovereign alone. Shema Israel, Shema, Shema, Shema Israel. Shema Israel, Shema, Shema, Shema Israel. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Shema, Shema, Shema. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Shema, Shema. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Shema, Shema. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema, Shema. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Shema, Shema. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Shema, Shema. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael.
Very good.
Thank you.
Acappella is like something that is daunting to me. I mean, because it's like you got to carry it on your own totally. It's on you. I mean, it's like, now switching over from playing the harp to, do you find yourself being more vulnerable when you sing things a cappella in public, or?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of it yet, so you know, I mean, I've given my CD to some people, and you know, some people are more encouraging than others. So I guess to that degree, I'm vulnerable. But I guess I like the way these came out. You know I don't sound like an opera singer or something like that, but these are, you know, pretty close to the way I envision them, and I guess, well, to some degree, it's more like you know, for me, singing and playing the harp, like playing the harp is a little bit more different. Like most people don't have harps, so to that degree, when you're playing the harp, you're doing something that's different from what most people do. Or singing, you know, it's a much more common thing. But singing in Hebrew is a little bit less common unless you're in a, you know, a Jewish congregation or something like that. So yeah, I guess they're just both sort of different. Like, you know, I could have put harp parts to these things, but somehow I just didn't really see that. Yeah, I guess singing is somewhat more, you know, it's in some ways more personal, I guess.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Now, there definitely, you said there was already a great chance of having a part 2, a volume 2 of the
Yeah, because actually I started out with just a few of them. It wasn't supposed to be a big, huge album, but then I kept getting more and more ideas, and at some point I sort of made myself just stop, because you know, you want to be able to come up with a finished album at some point instead of just you know, something that's always in progress. But you know, just because you know, once I started, I sort of couldn't stop. So you know, I'm hoping to get back to it at some point.
And we have been scrolling through here on top of the page here, you know, on the screen rather, you know, where they can get this at, you know,
Right.
and it's cdbaby.com.
Right.
And can you get your other CDs on the same site? Or?
I think so. I think my other one might be available on Amazon.com also. This one, I think the idea was for it to be on Amazon.com. There was some, just because there are so many different ones, like there are 35 of them, and you know, maybe some of them had some Hebrew in them. I think there was some way that this was a little bit more complicated to try to put on it. So I guess I should look into that again. But the harp one was somehow easier to put it on there. But yeah, my harp music is available through Amazon.com.
And people want to get you for maybe like a church service or a church.
Yeah.
Well, because you do you're Jewish, you still play a lot of, especially events around the Christmas time. You play.
I've played at many more Christian events than Jewish events. I mean, I've done some Jewish events, but compared to how many Christian events I've done, it's really minuscule.
But anyway, they got the contact information there through your email. Now, would you want to also give out any other way to get hold of you, or?
I work through Rush Entertainment. That's RUSCH. RushEntertainment.com. You can contact them that way.
Anyway, now
Contact
you go all over. You've been all like several states. Do you go for like for gigs? I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, I mean mainly Michigan, but I performed at one synagogue in West Virginia, and I've done some work in Canada.
Yeah, and that's where you also went to college.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Was it which college was that?
University of Toronto.
University of Toronto. Anyway, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I mean, it's just I'm always like I love this because I love the CD because it's like it's got a lot of a lot of spiritual meaning as well as it's got a historical and they're cultural. I mean, it's all tied together, and I think that's I really congratulate you for doing this because I think that's an effort that. It's really commendable. I really do.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks again for showing up again, people. If you want to contact Laurel, you have the email address there.
And it's made by Alley Records, too, I wanted to
And that's out of where?
Ypsilanti.
Ypsilanti. So she tries to keep things local, even though she's no longer officially in Ann Arbor. But anyway, it was very good to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too.
Have a good one.